Hi, today for Think for a Change, I have been asked by a friend to make a video responding to the YouTube videos that are generating right now in response to the UCLA student who posted a video with lots of racist comments in it about the Asian students in the UCLA library who speak very loudly on their phones. Her initial complaint seems to be one of manners in public places, especially quiet spaces like libraries. But she goes off into a really horrible direction by making extremely racist comments, and those are the two issues that I want to be addressing right now. So far, the responses to the video have been really hostile. Oftentimes, people are making threats and everything, and since the UCLA student who made the initial video has given a public apology, but I don't think that responding to what she has done in a hostile way is very helpful. Rather, I think this provides a really good opportunity for us to think through what precisely it is that Alexandra Wallace, her comments, what they are and how they're racist, because maybe she knew that she wasn't being politically correct when she said it, but maybe she didn't know that she was being racist, or maybe she didn't know that it was going to cause such a wildfire on YouTube. And some people have even said the difference between her and other people, there's especially one guy who said he's Asian and Asians are racist, the difference is that they have common sense not to say it. That's not the position I'm going to be going from. I want to say that racism is not okay, and it doesn't make it okay to just not say it either, but rather to work through the functionings of racism in order to challenge racism. So what is interesting, at least, about this strange phenomenon of this young student posting a video saying racist things and everybody getting really upset about it is that people are getting upset about it. That's bizarre, because people make racist, anti-Asian comments, jokes, remarks all the time. Not just students at college campuses, but people on the streets, celebrities, in movies, television shows, whatever, on the radio. They're made quite frequently, and very few people seem to pay attention, seem to care, or seem to really understand the gravity of those remarks and the racism that's inherent in them. An example is from Adam Carolla's radio show that aired in LA a couple years back, where he did the ching chong for like over a minute or something, and very few people gave any kind of second glance or gave an uproar at all about the incredibly offensive nature of what aired on his radio show. So what's unique and interesting and really, I guess, fortuitous of this situation is that people are responding by recognizing that the UCLA students' comments were racist. Now, this I think is also interesting because anti-Asian racism works in a different way than how most white people and people in general think about racism, because racism is often associated with anti-black racism for good reason given the history of the United States, but also there's anti-Asian and anti-Latino racism that's been working for a long time too. Other histories that are involved in the creation of the United States that involve the degradation and exploitation of other people as well. But so much attention gets put onto this black-white binary that we fail to really appreciate the complexities of how racism works, and thus if we only look at black-white racism, we will ignore or preclude the possibility to think through other forms of racism and how they might be affecting other people too. So my point right now is just that there's other ways that racism operates, and I think it's intriguing that this UCLA student's comments have been tagged as racist, which they are, because she makes hostile comments about Asian students and their families, criticizing them for not being like brought up well, not knowing how to fend for themselves. And then that really insensitive comment that she makes about people trying to contact family members who have been affected by the tsunami, which is just cold. That's just cold. But so those are obvious generalizations, and obviously the really poor impersonation of what I think she would imagine a Chinese accent or the language would sound like. Those are all racist generalizations about Asian people, but there are other ways that anti-Asian racism works that people probably don't recognize as really racist. And an example is from my own experience just a couple of weeks ago. I was asked to give a guest lecture in someone's class, and I was preparing to present the material from my Where Are the Gay Girls video, actually. And before I even began, I step in front of the class, say hello, and a student from the front of the class raises his hand. And I say, yes, what would you like? And he goes, are you Asian? And it caught me off guard. I was so shocked and surprised. My response was, is that important? Does that matter? And he said, well, you don't look very Asian, but your last name is Wong. And again, caught me off guard. So I responded to him by explaining that what he said could be unpacked. If I were to give up my prepared lecture, I could spend an entire hour analyzing what he just said to help him see how what he is bringing up by asking me in a completely inappropriate way, of course, like, what does that have to do with the talk I'm going to give? But more importantly, in a way that carries some amount of racism, because there's an attitude of having to question a guest speaker of their race or ethnicity for what reason. It just, when people are wondering, well, how is that really racist? It just is really weird, because there's a sense of entitlement of needing to be able to judge whether or not someone is Asian because they don't look Asian enough or something. So there's other examples, like people saying, well, where are you from? And I say I'm from Idaho, and they say, no, where are your parents from? And I say they're from Idaho too, and then they say, oh, I'm sorry, no, I'm trying to get at, what they're trying to get at is, am I Asian? Yes, I am. I'm also half white, but see, that shouldn't matter, but somehow the Asian American identity is more complex than just how you look or where you're from. I'm a third generation born in America, Asian American woman, which means that my Asian family members who immigrated over here immigrated at the turn of the 1900s. We've been here for a long time. But already the question of where are you from? No, I mean, where did you immigrate from? No, I mean, okay, fine, you know what I mean. Those sort of questions are indicating another form of racism that is specifically directed to certain groups of people, like Asians, Asian Americans, Latinos, and probably others, that doesn't capture the same sort of issues that are frequently thought of when we think about anti-Black racism. So the complexity here, when people don't realize that they're being racist against Asians in particular, what's going on is that an Asian and Asian American identity is really complex and sophisticated, because you have issues of, are you born here? No, it makes me American if I am. But are you Asian? Well, sort of, I'm half, but do you have the culture? Well, not exactly, because my family's been here for so long, we're fairly assimilated, which makes me pretty white. Do you speak any Chinese? No, I don't. But all of these things still don't mean that I'm not Asian American, and vice versa. If people are speaking Chinese, so what? They can still be American, and people can be Asian and be American, and people can be tagged Asian because they look that way. Like, imagine someone, like a Korean girl who's adopted by a white family. People assume that she's so Korean, but she might have been raised in Idaho too, and raised very, very white, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't have a sort of Asian American identity. But so and by the way, Asia is a very large part of the world with lots of different people from lots of different areas, so not everybody's the same. Already it's difficult to generalize who's Asian or not, or not being careful enough about what kind of Asians we're talking about. So anyway, another part of this racism is not just about the way that we look, even though that's what the student referenced, and what most people think of when they think of racism, but also, as I was just indicating, anti-Asian racism carries another element of it, of this kind of forever foreigner quality, that if you're Asian, you aren't American, which is also what the UCLA student is saying. She's like, hey, in America, we have American manners. Okay, well, what if the people that she's talking to are Americans too? They just happen to speak another language. She has a different issue on her hands. But this is a really good book. This is Linda Elkoff's Visible Identities, and it came out in 2006, I believe. And she analyzes a lot of good stuff about race and racism. In particular, is one of the few philosophers to give attention to Latino and Asian American identities with respect to race and racism. And she mentions here that racial oppression works on multiple axes, with color being the most dominant and currently the most pernicious. But color is not exhaustive of all forms of racial oppression. For instance, there are pejorative terms that are used, like chinks and slant eyes. These terms denigrate a whole people. And then she goes on to say more that thus these terms demonstrate the possibility of a racialization and racism that works by constructing and then denigrating racialized features, like the slant of the eyes or hair texture, in addition not just to skin color. And, oh, that's what she says, racialized features and characteristics other than skin color. We might think of these as two independent axes of racialization that operate through physical features other than color and through genealogies of cultural origin. There is then the color axis, the physical characteristics other than color axis, and the cultural origin axis. And this is where she gets into her discussion of nativism associated with xenophobia, this phobia or a prejudice against immigrants, which definitely affects Asian Americans and Latinos. But so here I'm going to just end really fast by saying, if we're now paying attention to the ways that racism is operating against Asian and Asian Americans, including in this UCLA student's video, and other parts of pop culture, media, etc., it's good for us to understand that racism operates differently in ways that we might not be so attuned to initially. But there's the original question that my friend asked me to answer too, was that, well, what do we do in these situations where you have someone, an Asian person, speaking very loudly on the phone in the quiet space of the library? How do you address that? Well, let's take the Asian person out. How do you address any person who's speaking really loudly on the phone in the library or in the movie theater or some other quiet place? If you want to, if it means that much to you, you can go and ask them to be quiet. Give them the little shh, like the UCLA student wanted to do. And where we go wrong is when we squeeze in a generalization about a race or a group of people to say, those Asians are too loud. Or what if it was a white person on the phone being too loud? Would you say, man, these white people on this phone, yeah, in this library, too loud? No. It's okay. If people aren't being respectful, you can address them as such. But you don't have to generalize and make racist comments about it. So that's all I've got. Thanks for watching.